The Arizona sun blazed mercilessly through the windows of the Scottsdale estate as Michael Harrison gripped the forged documents, his knuckles white with rage that threatened to tear him apart. His daughter Ashley's signature stared back from the transfer deed. She'd stolen his Sedona ranch, the sacred place where his wife Linda had spent her final days painting the red rocks. The same daughter he'd raised alone for 22 years had handed their sanctuary to her husband's family, the Prescotts, who'd been plotting since the wedding reception. "How could she do this?" Michael whispered to Linda's photograph on the mantel, her captured smile now feeling like mockery. The ranch wasn't just property, it was where Linda had found peace during her battle with cancer, where her art studio still held unfinished landscapes, where her spirit lived in every sunset over the canyon. Ashley had scattered her mother's ashes there, promising to protect their sacred ground. Now she'd sold those promises to feed the Prescotts' insatiable greed. The betrayal burned deeper because Michael had sacrificed everything for Ashley. After Linda's death, he channeled his grief into ensuring their daughter wanted for nothing: elite universities, art scholarships to honor Linda's legacy, a substantial trust fund, unwavering support even when she married Ryan Prescott, despite his warnings. He'd watched his loving daughter transform into a calculating stranger, but blamed it on grief, not avarice. The truth glared at him from documents filed in secret. Michael set down the papers and walked to his study, each step heavy with dark purpose. The Prescotts thought they'd won, that his mourning had made him weak. They'd miscalculated fatally. Michael Harrison hadn't built a real estate empire across the Southwest by being soft. He'd crushed competitors, survived market crashes, dominated Arizona's brutal business landscape. The Prescotts had miscalculated his grief for vulnerability. They were about to discover why that assumption would destroy them. Thunder rumbled across the desert, rare for October. Michael began making calls to contacts dormant for years. Old favors, buried connections, relationships that reached into every corner of Arizona's power structure. The Prescotts wanted the Sedona Ranch. They'd get more than they bargained for. Every acre would become a battlefield. Every red rock would witness their downfall. Because Michael had learned that protecting what you love sometimes requires becoming what others fear. His phone buzzed, Ashley calling, probably to test whether he'd discovered her betrayal. Michael declined and opened his laptop instead. The war for Linda's sanctuary began now. By the time the Prescotts realized their mistake, they'd understand why crossing Michael Harrison was like challenging the desert itself. Beautiful from a distance, deadly up close. You think your family is above betrayal? Think your children would never choose money over memory? Subscribe now before that delusion shatters your world. When blood becomes poison, you'll need these warnings to survive.
Ashley Harrison Prescott adjusted her pearl necklace, a Prescott family heirloom that felt like a noose, as she entered her father's Phoenix office building. 5 months had passed since she'd filed the transfer papers, and the old man remained oblivious. Pathetic how grief had dulled the corporate wolf who'd once terrorized Arizona's business elite. The ranch sat empty most months while Michael wandered his memories like a ghost. Ryan's parents needed those millions more than her father needed his shrine to the dead. "Mrs. Prescott," the receptionist greeted her, the formal title dripping with contempt. Strange. Usually, Maria called her Ashley with maternal warmth. Today, the entire floor felt electric with anticipation, like the desert before a storm. Even the air conditioning seemed to whisper accusations, each vent breathing judgment. Michael's office door stood open, unprecedented for any meeting. Ashley entered to find her father positioned behind his desk like a judge preparing execution. Gone was the grieving widower she'd manipulated for months. In his place sat the apex predator who'd built an empire from desert dust. The transformation was so complete, so terrifying, that Ashley's rehearsed lies died in her throat. "Sit down, Ashley." Her name in his mouth sounded foreign, stripped of decades of love. The desk held a single folder, thick with evidence. Ashley recognized her handiwork immediately. Every forged signature, every falsified document, every betrayal cataloged with prosecutorial precision. Her carefully orchestrated theft lay dissected like a corpse in the desert sun. "Dad, let me explain," she began, but Michael's raised hand silenced her with the finality of a closing coffin. He opened the folder deliberately, revealing not just legal documents, but photographs. Linda's art studio, preserved exactly as she'd left it. The meditation garden where Ashley had promised to honor her mother's memory. The trail where they had scattered Linda's ashes. Each image was an indictment of Ashley's greed. "Your mother's last words were about you," Michael said, his voice carrying the weight of Judgment Day. She said, "Take care of our baby." I've spent 5 years honoring that request, even as you morphed into someone she wouldn't recognize. But stealing her sanctuary, using her death as a business opportunity, that dies today. Ashley's prepared justifications crumbled like ancient ruins. She had expected emotional manipulation, tears she could navigate. This cold fury was something else entirely. "The Prescotts are facing bankruptcy. Ryan's parents will lose everything if we don't—" "They'll lose everything regardless," Michael interrupted. "You have 36 hours to reverse the transfer. After that, I stop being your father and become your worst nightmare. The Prescotts think they've gained a ranch. They've actually declared war on someone who's already lost everything that matters. That makes me extraordinarily dangerous." The meeting ended with Ashley stumbling out, her designer heels catching on carpet that never tripped her before. Behind her, Michael made his first call. The Prescotts had drawn first blood. Now he'd bleed them dry. And Ashley would learn that some betrayals cut so deep, they sever souls along with family ties. Ryan Prescott paced their Paradise Valley mansion like a trapped coyote, while his parents, William and Margaret, sat rigid on furniture that would soon be repossessed. "He knows everything," Ashley repeated, her voice hollow with shock. "My father isn't the broken man we thought. He's something else entirely." The 36-hour ultimatum ticked down like a bomb, and they could already smell the explosion coming. "The transfer is completely legal," Margaret insisted, though her confidence cracked like drought-stricken earth. "We hired the best attorneys. Michael can't simply—" Her phone rang, cutting off her denial. Their banker's panicked voice filled the room. "Federal investigators just seized all your accounts. 20 years of transactions under review. Everything's frozen." William's phone buzzed next. Their country club had banned them for life. Then Ryan's, his development company, was under investigation for fraud. "This is impossible," Ryan breathed, watching his family's carefully constructed empire crumble like sandstone. But Ashley recognized her father's signature. Every attack was precisely legal, completely deniable, utterly devastating. A word to the right prosecutor, a file to the right agency, a conversation with the right judge. Michael Harrison was demonstrating his reach, and the message was clear. "You stole what I treasure. Now I'll take everything you have." By nightfall, the Prescott dynasty lay in ruins. Business partners vanished. Social connections evaporated. Even their household staff quit without notice, warned away by whispers of the family's impending doom. "We have to return the ranch," Ryan said, defeat heavy in his voice. But William Prescott's pride wouldn't bend. "Never. That property is our salvation. One grieving widower can't destroy the Prescott name." Ashley watched her in-laws' delusions and felt her own cracking like a dam. She'd married Ryan believing the Prescotts represented everything her family lacked: old Arizona money, political connections, social prestige. Now she saw them as her father did, desperate scavengers who'd used her as a tool. The realization came too late. She'd already chosen sides, already betrayed the one person who'd never betrayed her. As desert lightning split the sky, Ashley made a choice. If the Prescotts wanted war, she'd stand with them. But privately, she began documenting everything. Every conversation, every scheme, every manipulation. When this conflict ended, and it would end, catastrophically, she needed evidence that she'd been coerced. It was a coward's strategy, but the Prescotts had taught her that family was just another word for leverage. Thunder shook the mansion as William Prescott declared total war. "We're taking that ranch tomorrow. Michael Harrison is about to learn that the Prescott name still commands respect in Arizona." Ashley said nothing, but she knew the truth. Her father didn't care about names or legacies. He cared about Linda's memory. And anyone who threatened that was already destroyed. They just didn't know it yet. Still believe your loved ones would never betray you? Subscribe now before that faith becomes your epitaph. When family reveals their true nature, you'll wish you'd prepared for the worst.
Michael stood in the ranch's newly fortified command center, surrounded by monitors displaying every inch of Linda's sanctuary. His security specialist, Jake Rodriguez, a former Special Forces operative, had spent 3 weeks transforming the property into a technological fortress. Every gate, building, and trail now responded to Michael's remote commands. The ranch that had sheltered Linda's final months would now repel those who tried to steal her memory. "The Prescotts are mobilizing," Jake reported, pulling up drone footage. "They've hired moving trucks, private security, even a spiritual advisor to cleanse the negative energy." Michael almost smiled. Let them come. Linda's sanctuary would teach them about negative energy. Every place she'd loved would resist their presence with technological fury. The plan was brilliant in its complexity. No violence, Michael was civilized. But the property would become uninhabitable through perfectly legal means. Water systems that reverse flow without warning, electrical grids that fluctuated in nauseating patterns, climate control that turned buildings into alternating ovens and freezers, security systems that sealed exits while sirens wailed, all controlled remotely, all explicable as technical malfunctions in a remote property. "What about Ashley?" Jake asked carefully. He'd provided security for the Harrison family for years, remembered when Ashley had been a loving daughter who worshipped her parents. Michael's jaw tightened like a vice. "Ashley made her choice. She weaponized my grief and sold her mother's memory for Prescott money. She's no longer my daughter. She's an enemy combatant." As the Prescotts prepared their invasion, Michael prepared their welcome. Jake had installed additional deterrents: projection systems that would display Linda's artwork on every surface, motion sensors that triggered recordings of her voice, even scent dispensers that would fill rooms with her favorite desert sage. The ranch would become a living shrine to the woman whose memory they'd tried to steal. "The legal ramifications," Jake began, but Michael cut him off with a gesture. "Everything we're doing is legal. I still own the property until a court says otherwise. If the systems malfunction during their illegal occupation, that's their problem. If they're psychologically unable to handle the environment, they're free to leave." His smile was sharp as cactus spines. "They won't last 1 hour." The monitors showed the Prescott convoy approaching along the desert road, black vehicles like vultures against the red rocks. Michael activated the first defensive measures. The automatic gates slammed shut with finality. Security lights blazed to life, turning the property into a harsh spotlight, and from hidden speakers throughout the ranch, Linda's voice welcomed them. "This land is sacred, blessed by love and memory. Those who enter with greed in their hearts will find only desolation." The battle for Linda's sanctuary had begun, and Michael Harrison would accept nothing less than the Prescotts' complete annihilation. The Prescott family's triumphant arrival at the Sedona Ranch transformed into a nightmare within minutes. As their convoy approached the main gate, the irrigation systems erupted in precise patterns, turning the desert road into a muddy trap that swallowed their luxury vehicles. William Prescott's handmade boots disappeared into red mud, while Margaret shrieked about her ruined designer dress. But the water assault was merely the overture to the ranch's symphony of technological vengeance. Ashley watched from the lead vehicle as her in-laws battled against the property's digital rebellion. Security lights strobed in sickening patterns, while hidden speakers unleashed a cacophony of sounds. Linda's laughter mixing with coyote howls, her voice reading poetry, and recordings of young Ashley promising to keep Mommy's special place safe forever. The sensory assault was overwhelming, each sound a blade to Ashley's conscience. "Override the systems!" Ryan shouted at their tech team, but every attempt failed catastrophically. The ranch's network had been encrypted beyond their capabilities. When they tried cutting power, solar batteries seamlessly activated. When they attempted to ram the gates, reinforced steel barriers emerged from the ground. The ranch had become an impenetrable fortress, defending itself with Linda's fury. Inside the main house, the rebellion escalated to hellish proportions. Plumbing reversed without warning, flooding rooms with sewage. Temperatures swung wildly. The master bedroom became a frozen wasteland, while Linda's art studio transformed into a suffocating inferno. But the psychological warfare cut deepest of all. Every wall, window, and screen became a canvas for Linda's art. Her paintings materialized on smart glass, her sketches appeared on every monitor, her self-portraits stared from every reflective surface. The ranch itself became a gallery of the woman they'd tried to erase. And in the center of it all, the projection system displayed Linda's final painting, a family portrait of Michael, Ashley, and herself against the Sedona sunset. The image Ashley had betrayed for Prescott wealth. The family retreated after 5 hours of technological torture, soaked, traumatized, and psychologically shattered. Margaret had collapsed twice. William's composure had cracked completely, leaving him muttering about ghosts. Ryan looked at his wife with dawning horror, finally understanding the magnitude of their crime. They'd tried to steal more than property. They'd attempted to desecrate love itself. "We're calling the FBI," William wheezed from their mud-trapped vehicle. But their lawyer was already delivering catastrophic news. Michael's legal team had filed criminal charges for fraud, elder abuse, and racketeering. The forged documents had been traced to Ashley's computer. The Prescotts weren't just losing the ranch, they were facing decades in prison. The property they'd coveted had become the instrument of their complete destruction. Ashley sat in silence, her designer clothes ruined, her carefully constructed life in ashes. She'd traded her father's love for the Prescotts' approval, her mother's memory for their money. Now she had neither. The ranch stood victorious behind them, its lights returning to normal, its systems quieting. It had delivered its message. Linda's sanctuary would never shelter those who betrayed her memory, and Michael Harrison would ensure that betrayal carried a price beyond their worst nightmares.
3 weeks of failed assaults on the ranch had shattered the Prescott family's delusions of grandeur. Each approach triggered increasingly vicious countermeasures, swarms of drones that broadcast their every move to law enforcement, automated vehicles that blocked access roads. Even the desert wildlife seemed hostile, with rattlesnakes appearing wherever they stepped. The property had evolved from defensive to actively hunting its would-be invaders. Ashley found herself abandoned by both families, living in a cheap Flagstaff motel that reeked of failure. Ryan had filed for divorce, blaming her for their destruction. Her father wouldn't acknowledge her existence. She'd lost everything in the space of a month: husband, family, wealth, identity. The woman who'd betrayed for money now couldn't afford a decent meal. The war's climax arrived on a storm-lashed night when the Prescotts made their final, desperate assault. They came with bulldozers and hired criminals, intending to physically demolish the ranch and claim the land by force. But Michael had anticipated this escalation.
As their machines rumbled toward the property, every defensive system activated in perfect, terrifying synchronization. The ranch erupted in blinding light, projecting massive holograms into the storm. Linda painting in the desert, teaching young Ashley about color and light, her final days in the studio. Her voice echoed across the canyon. Art is love made visible. This ranch is my masterpiece, and those who would destroy it destroy love itself. The projections were so vivid, so real, that even the hired thugs stopped, transfixed by the ghostly display. But Michael had saved his masterstroke for this moment. The projection system displayed surveillance footage from the past months. Every Prescott conversation about stealing the property, every moment of Ashley's betrayal, their schemes and greed laid bare for all to witness. The hired crew realized they were witnessing a family's complete destruction and fled into the storm. Even nature seemed to join the battle, with lightning strikes dangerously close to their equipment. William Prescott collapsed first, clutching his chest as sirens wailed in the distance. Margaret screamed about revenge until federal agents arrested her for conspiracy. Ryan stood in the rain, watching his family's empire burn, finally understanding that they'd challenged something beyond their comprehension. A widower's love transformed into technological vengeance. As dawn broke over the Red Rocks, Ashley stood alone in the desert, watching paramedics load her in-laws into ambulances while federal agents seized their vehicles. The ranch stood serene in the morning light, its systems finally quiet. She approached the main gate, knowing it wouldn't open, but needing to try. "Dad," she whispered to the security camera, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The gate remained closed, the silence more damning than any words could be. Michael watched from his command center as his daughter stood at the gate, soaked and broken. Jake Rodriguez stood beside him, uncomfortable with the family destruction he'd helped orchestrate. "She's still your daughter," Jake said quietly. Michael's face remained stone. "My daughter died the day she forged those documents. That's just a stranger who happens to share my DNA." Think family betrayal can't happen to you? Subscribe now and wake up. When the people you trust most reveal their true nature, these stories might be your only preparation for survival.
Michael stood in his attorney's office in downtown Phoenix, signing the final documents with hands steady as the desert mountains. The Sedona Ranch would transfer to the Linda Harrison Foundation, a charity supporting families affected by cancer. He retained lifetime usage rights, ensuring the ranch remained protected while preventing any future claims. It was elegant, permanent, unbreakable. The Prescotts could rage from their prison cells. Ashley could beg from her motel room, but Linda's sanctuary was beyond their reach forever. "Your daughter has been calling," his attorney, Patricia Chen, mentioned carefully. "She's left over 200 messages. She says she has information about the Prescotts' manipulation." Michael's jaw tightened. Ashley's attempts to rewrite history, to paint herself as a victim, were as transparent as they were pathetic. She'd made her choices with clear eyes and a greedy heart. "She's also been hospitalized," Patricia continued. "Exhaustion and dehydration. No insurance, no money for treatment." Michael felt nothing. The girl in that hospital wasn't his daughter. She was a stranger who'd weaponized his grief. His daughter had died the moment she'd chosen the Prescotts over family, money over memory, greed over love. The documents were signed, witnessed, notarized. The ranch was safe, Linda's memory protected, justice served. As Michael prepared to leave, Patricia handed him an envelope. "She asked me to give you this." Michael almost refused, then took it. Inside was a single photograph. Linda teaching 5-year-old Ashley to paint, both laughing in the Sedona sunset. On the back, in Ashley's childhood handwriting, "Mommy and me forever and ever." Michael stared at the photo, waiting to feel something. Regret, perhaps. Forgiveness, maybe. But there was only emptiness where his daughter used to live in his heart. Ashley had killed that love as surely as cancer had killed Linda. Some betrayals cut too deep for healing. Some choices destroyed more than relationships. They destroyed souls. He handed the photo back to Patricia. "Return it. Tell her that girl in the picture died when she betrayed her mother's memory. I have no daughter." The words were final, absolute, irreversible. Patricia nodded sadly, understanding that some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. Some betrayals echoed through eternity. As Michael left the office, his phone buzzed with another call from Ashley. He blocked the number without answering. The war was over. The Prescotts were destroyed, their empire in ashes, their freedom gone. Ashley was alone, abandoned, facing the consequences of her choices. And Linda's ranch stood, protected, a monument to love that greed could not corrupt. Justice had been served, even if it tasted like ashes.
5 years passed like seasons in the desert. The Sedona Ranch flourished under the Foundation's care, hosting cancer patients and their families, providing solace where Linda had found peace. Her art studio became a therapy center. Her meditation garden offered comfort to the grieving. The property that had once been a battlefield now radiated healing. Michael visited monthly, finding purpose in seeing Linda's dream serve others. The Prescotts had been scattered to the winds. William died in federal prison, his heart giving out during the trial. Margaret survived but lost her mind, spending her days in a psychiatric facility muttering about ghosts and vengeance. Ryan served 10 years for fraud, his family name forever tainted. The empire they'd built on deception had crumbled completely, leaving nothing but cautionary tales. Ashley survived, somehow. After the hospital released her, she disappeared into America's underclass, working minimum-wage jobs, living in efficiency apartments, aging rapidly under the weight of her choices. Michael received reports occasionally, though he never asked for them. She had tried to rebuild, tried to find redemption, but the stain of betrayal followed her everywhere. No one trusted a daughter who'd stolen from her grieving father. On the 5th anniversary of Linda's death, Michael stood in her memorial garden at the ranch. The desert bloomed around him, cacti flowers brilliant in the morning sun. He held Linda's favorite painting, a sunrise over red rocks, hope captured in oil and canvas. As he placed fresh flowers at her memorial stone, he heard footsteps on the path behind him. Ashley stood 20 feet away, barely recognizable. The designer clothes had been replaced by thrift store finds. The confident posture had crumbled into permanent defeat. The beautiful young woman who'd married into wealth now looked older than her years, worn down by consequences and regret. She didn't speak, didn't approach, just stood witnessing what she'd tried to steal. "Security will escort you out," Michael said without turning. His voice held no anger, no emotion at all. Ashley was simply a stranger trespassing on sacred ground. "I know. I needed to see it one more time, to remember who I used to be before I became a monster." Security arrived, gentle but firm. As they led Ashley away, she turned back once. "I dream about her every night. She asks me why. I never have an answer." Michael didn't respond. Some questions had no answers. Some betrayals had no redemption. Some choices echoed through eternity, defining not just moments, but entire lives. As Ashley's figure disappeared down the path, Michael returned to Linda's memorial garden. The ranch stood peaceful around him, serving its purpose, honoring its creator. The war had been won, justice served, memory protected. But victory felt hollow when the price was a daughter's soul. He'd protected Linda's legacy by destroying their family. It was a trade he'd make again, but that didn't make it less tragic. The sun climbed higher, painting the red rocks in brilliant light. Somewhere in the distance, a family laughed as they explored the trails. The ranch lived on, Linda's love made tangible, helping others heal. That was her true monument, not the property itself, but the love it represented and the healing it provided.
The Prescotts had tried to steal stones and soil. They'd never understood they were trying to steal something that couldn't be taken, only given. Michael placed his hand on Linda's memorial stone, feeling the warmth of sun-heated rock. "I kept my promise. I protected what you loved, even from her." The desert wind carried his words away, and with them, the last of his grief. What remained was purpose, memory, and the absolute certainty that love sometimes demanded terrible prices. He'd paid them all. As he walked back to the main house, he didn't look back. The past was buried deeper than Linda's ashes. The future belonged to those who would find healing where his family had found destruction. And Ashley would spend the rest of her life learning that some betrayals echoed forever, defining not just what you'd done, but who you'd become. The ranch would outlive them all, a testament to love that greed couldn't corrupt and betrayal couldn't destroy. In the end, that was Linda's greatest gift, teaching him that protecting what you love sometimes means destroying what you've created. Michael Harrison had lost a daughter, but saved a legacy. It was a trade written in tears and carved in stone, as permanent as the red rocks that had witnessed it all. The war was over, the sanctuary endured, and somewhere in the desert wind, Linda's laughter echoed, finally at peace. If you've watched this far without subscribing, you're gambling with your future. When betrayal comes for you, and statistics say it will, you'll wish you'd prepared. Hit subscribe now or explain in the comments why you think you're immune to family treachery. Your silence might be your epitaph.